make things better for all of us. So I'm really excited that we have some excellent speakers who are on today. And I will say briefly who they are. We have Cindy Roper from the NRDC, the Natural Resources Defense Council. We have Aaron McDonald, who is with Michigan LCV, League of Conservation Voters. We have Aisha Wells from Mothering Justice, and we'll be talking about childcare issues. And we have Ted Phillips, who is with the United Community Housing Coalition. And then we are also going to be showing a very short couple of videos related to car insurance, which I know has been a big, big issue. And so really excited to have all of our speakers on. Thank you to everyone who's joining on Zoom. And then thank you also to everyone who is watching on Facebook Live. I want to encourage everyone to participate by asking questions. If you're on Zoom, you can ask your questions in the chat. And then if you are watching on Facebook Live, you can ask questions by putting those questions in the comments of the video. And we will be sure to get to as many questions as we can. And so again, thank you for joining. And I'll start off with a question that I'm hoping folks can put in your responses in the chat or the Facebook comments, and talk about what are the biggest rising costs that you are personally dealing with. So if you want to put in a word, housing or water or car insurance or prescription drugs, put in some of those thoughts into the chat on Zoom or in the comments on Facebook Live. So I'm going to next bring up Cindy Roper, who has been a tireless advocate, and I've been so proud to work alongside her for many years on a number of issues, but especially around the issue of water affordability. So Cindy, if you can talk a little bit about what the problem is in Michigan related to rising water bills and what are the solutions that we have been working together on.
Sure. Thank you so much. And I do want to start by thanking you for the invitation to join tonight's virtual town hall, such an important and timely, unfortunately, topic on affordability issues. And Senator Chang, you've been at the forefront of tackling water affordability in Michigan for more than 12 years and have really convened a diverse group of about 70 organizations representing seniors, water utilities, community groups, social service agencies, environmental groups, organized labor, and other nonprofits to really come together around solutions for this crisis. While we're not always aligned on everything, this group is very aligned on the need to address the problem of unaffordable water in Michigan. And while high electric rates and other energy utility issues are generating the biggest headlines, there is a water affordability crisis growing across the state, where it is estimated that 1 in 10 Michigan households struggle with unaffordable water bills. But it has largely been invisible, both in Michigan and across the country. I think we have really charted a course where that issue is starting to come to the forefront and that we are making progress in getting there. So on the drinking water side alone, people wonder, how did we get to the place where water is becoming increasingly unaffordable? There are many challenges facing our water systems, from aging infrastructure to stronger drinking water protections, climate change, cybersecurity risks. There are many things that water utilities are dealing with. And if communities continue to rely almost exclusively on revenue from customer water bills to close the investment gap, it is estimated that water bills will rise by 125% by 2050. And that's without thinking about inflation. So while they might feel high now, we are on a path of increased water bills. And we're not going to get around that. The federal government's funding for water infrastructure investments have just dramatically declined over the past 50 years. And right now, only about 4% of the total infrastructure investments in the country are going to water, even though water is a critical resource that we all rely upon, in Michigan and throughout the country. Also, Michigan does not have a dedicated funding stream to repair and upgrade our aging water systems. As many of you know, last year the legislature adopted funding for road repairs, but they haven't addressed water infrastructure funding, which is vital to making sure Michigan is healthy and that our families have safe drinking water. So where does this leave us? As a result of this investment gap, as I noted, that most of the cost for both clean water, which is on the sort of sewage and stormwater side, as well as drinking water, has been shifted almost entirely onto our water utilities. And it's straining households all across the state. In really every part of the state, we've seen that people are struggling with their water bills. And so if you are struggling for with your electric bills, there are both state and federal sources of funding to be able to offset your electric bills. But there is no permanent federal program. There is no permanent state program. And so there are some local programs that are a patchwork of support for residents that is very inadequate for what the need is. And if you can't pay your water bill, water utilities often pursue water shutoffs. They place outstanding water debt onto property taxes in the form of liens. Water utilities lose vital revenue when people can't afford their bills and are forced to delay critical maintenance and other upgrades. And then they end up having to raise rates on the customers who can pay because these costs must be covered somehow. So when we are working on this together, we are working on two major solutions. One is for short-term emergency water assistance. That is really, I cannot pay my bill, I cannot keep my water on. And where do I go? There's no federal money, as I said. So in the Michigan Senate, in the current budget, there's a proposed $10 million, which will help with water bills. But so far, the House hasn't included anything for water assistance. So the budget is going to be negotiated between the House and Senate over the coming months, really over the next couple of months. And so it's very important for people to weigh in and to let it be known that they need help with their water bills so that we at least maintain that $10 million the Senate has put forward. The real solution that we're working on, though, is a package of bipartisan water affordability bills. These are Senate bills 248 through 256 that would establish a statewide water affordability program. The program would be designed to help people pay what would be considered affordable based on their income. And so I can share links in the chat as we move forward about those bills, but really they would provide essentially affordable water bill opportunities for people under certain income thresholds. They would provide shut-off protections, increase water utility data transparency, and provide tenant and other protections. So that is really our goal. We don't want to be going back and asking for appropriations every year. We want to move this over to a sustainable program that will help people pay rates that they can afford, that the water utility can have guarantees of revenue coming in, and so that those burdens aren't being shifted to people who are, the rest of the ratepayers, and that everybody can keep their water on. It's not a luxury. Water is not a luxury. It's the most basic requirement for human life. And in the Great Lakes state, no one should experience water insecurity, nor should water providers have to take drastic action against residential customers. So I'll stop there. And again, I'll share some links in the chat for those of you who would like more information, and then we can move on to the next speaker. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and appreciate again all of our partnership and all of your work on water and many, many other issues. So I think I asked earlier, and I'll ask again for others who have joined since we started. We're here for our virtual affordability town hall. And earlier I asked participants to think about what are the biggest rising costs that you are personally dealing with, you or your family or your neighbors. So feel free to drop that a response in the chat or on the comments section on Facebook Live. So far, I think that we have heard on Facebook from folks about food, gas, and water. We have heard about DTE bills being the biggest concern. So thank you to everyone who has made a comment so far, and others feel free to leave a comment as well. Up next, we are going to hear from Aaron McDonald, who is from Michigan League of Conservation Voters. And Aaron's going to be talking about energy bills and what we can do to help ratepayers.
Great. Thank you so much. I am going to share my screen because I have some slides, if that's okay. Um, so yeah, thank you so much for having us here, Senator Chang. I'm really excited to talk about the Michigan League of Conservation Voters and the work that we're doing to create momentum around the Ratepayer Bill of Rights. So just really quickly, who we are, we're a nonprofit environmental organization dedicated to protecting Michigan's air, land, water, and democracy. We work to pass policies and elect people that will protect our environment, fight for a clean energy future, and also protect our democracy. So the problem here, I really like the framing of the problem and the solution, and I'm going to go into that with energy costs here. Michigan families are paying the highest electricity bills in the Midwest while enduring some of the most frequent and longest power outages in the United States. For far too long, Michigan's monopoly utilities have operated with limited oversight and limited consequence for performance. And our ratepayer bill of rights shifts the balance of power back towards the public by establishing clear rules, meaningful penalties, and guaranteeing protections by expanding outaging credits, strengthening winter shutoff safeguards, and unlocking different community solar options, and also banning utility political contributions. This package delivers these really overdue reforms that put Michigan families ahead over corporate profits. So really the problem's clear. Too many families, and as someone in the Facebook chat had said, families, small businesses are struggling to afford these skyrocketing electric rates, this crumbling infrastructure that we have, and an energy system that prioritizes these utility company profits over the people. So to go into the solution here, um, Michigan needs a ratepayer bill of rights. It will guarantee Michiganders the right to fair compensation when the power goes out. It'll ensure that we no longer have to pay the highest energy costs in the Midwest for some of the worst service in the country. And it'll protect us from paying for CEO bonuses and private jets while our power's out and we're in the dark. It'll ban these political contributions to state lawmakers from the utilities that they're supposed to be overseeing on behalf of us. And it will make sure that Michigan residents can generate their own more reliable energy via, for example, like solar arrays on their homes or with their neighbors, and something that our utility companies have worked repeatedly to block. So kind of what does this look like? So this is just kind of some of the different framings of the Ratepayer Bill of Rights and the list of bills that are being introduced in the legislature. So the right to fair compensation, even for renters. When the power goes out for days, families lose their groceries, their medicines, they're forced into costly alternatives, whether it's running a generator for multiple days at a time. And current outage credits are only around for at least DTE about $42 after 48 hours, roughly, in the average outage. So only after 48 hours do you get $42, which certainly does not cover the cost of the hundreds of dollars of groceries that maybe you have in your fridge. And should also require outage payments. The longer you're out, the more you're compensated, and this also includes renters too. So next is the right to fair rates, real accountability. As I said, we pay the highest rates in the Midwest for the longest amount of time out of power. In terms of energy reliability, it's been found that Michigan ranks 50th. We pay the highest amount, and we're also the least reliable. And while DTE consumers energy and enjoy these guaranteed profits and huge bonuses, the customers are left in the dark, and rates should be tied to performance standards. So poor service equals lower profits. Next is the right to end outrageous CEO bonuses. The utility executives collect massive bonuses, sometimes over $1 million. They get bonuses for meeting very lax standards for restoring our power during blackouts. And lawmakers should ban ratepayer-funded executive bonuses tied to rate hikes and weak performance goals. And kind of at the bottom here, you can see the rate hike proposals from last year. And this year, they just announced another rate hike request to the tune of roughly the same hundreds of millions of dollars. And then it's also the right to stop paying for private jets and lavish CEO lifestyles. We shouldn't be billed for utility executives' private jets, luxury resorts, or entertainment tabs. These costs have to be prohibited from being passed on to the customers. And then next is also the right to keep the lights on, so no more shutoffs. DT shut off customers 150,000 times last year, and so we must work to expand these assistance programs that we have, simplify them, and also pair them with like weatherization programs that will cut the bills long-term for all families, and also make their houses or apartments, wherever it may be, more resilient to the weather that we're seeing as climate change continues to increase the severity of storms. And then the next one is the right to boot big utility money out of our politics. Many elected officials have taken money from big monopoly utility companies. And by law, our legislators are tasked with overseeing and holding accountable our utility companies, but instead, they operate in fear of losing political contributions or being targeted with getting losing their seat if they step out of line. So we need the laws passed that ban political spending and gifts from regulated utilities, so that our lawmakers serve the public and not utility CEOs that donate to them. And then also the last one here is the right to energy independence and freedom. So Michiganders should be free to generate and share their own energy. Utilities have repeatedly blocked attempts to expand rooftop and community solar, leaving Michigan as one of the only states with a cap on private solar projects. So there's only a certain amount of private solar projects that can be had. And lawmakers must eliminate the solar cap and pass community solar laws that give us the freedom to lower our bills and also improve reliability in our electric grid. So here's kind of the status of the Ratepayer Bill of Rights in the legislature. This is my last little bit here. So we have first House Bill 5047, which is protecting kids and seniors from the Cold Act. So this is kind of to that earlier point of creating a protection that allows vulnerable groups to no longer have life-threatening winter utility shutoffs, while also providing additional information on how to access affordability and medical emergency assistance programs. And it would provide really needed relief for these families and seniors who are forced to choose between paying the heat or paying for food and medical necessities. And then there's a pretty large package here of bills that kind of encompasses a lot of the Ratepayer Bill of Rights, of outage credits and transparency. And it would, it outlines the different like credits for households and renters, and also require transparency on bills how long you've experienced outages, and would give people a lot higher than $42 after 48 hours for an outage. So these are kind of some of the bills that are being introduced right now, and we're really excited to see where they go over this session. And that is it for me, and I will pass it back over to the senator. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Aaron, and thank you for those really helpful slides. And I'm super excited about the great work that my friends and colleagues in the House are doing, and eager to support the effort. So thank you, thank you. Want to pause here and note that we have some more comments on Facebook Live. Another participant mentioned gas costs, insurance costs, utility costs. And we'll get to their question a little bit later on, which is a good question. So thank you, thank you. Feel free to, as you're listening to the speakers, if you have a question that you're thinking about feel free to put it in the comments if you're watching on Facebook Live or in the Q&A here on Zoom. And apparently the chat does not actually work for participants, so you can also put your comments in the Q&A. So that'll work too. All right, so up next we are going to hear from Aisha Wells from Mothering Justice about the ever-increasing cost of childcare. Welcome.
Okay, and don't we know it? Can you hear me? So how are y'all doing today? And thank you for letting me be here and allowing me to be here, Senator Chang. So again, my name is Aisha Wells. I'm one of the co-deputy directors at Mother and Justice and Mother and Justice Action Fund. I do all of our campaign work, which we affectionately like to call the Mama's Agenda. And just so y'all know who Mother and Justice is, we're a 501c3 and a 501c4. We're a multi-state organization that's rooted in Michigan, and we're dedicated to returning decision-making power to those most impacted by policy, mothers of color. And since 2015, our goal has been to place the political and policy power back into the hands over a very overlooked voting bloc, which is mamas. So I'm a mother. I have a 2-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and I have a 19-year-old. So I understand the cost of affordable childcare. So my give y'all some information about childcare right now. So the average person pays over excuse me, the average person pays over 40% of their income to childcare costs. So that is for one child, and that does not include any of the bills. Okay, it's just painting a picture for y'all. And so if you understand that parents and families are really struggling to afford childcare in Michigan, um, while at the exact same time, providers are underpaid, they're undervalued, and they're overwhelmed. And with many of them forced to have been closing their doors over the past 5 to 6 years after COVID. So this current system that we have right now has barriers. It really hurts undocumented families, single parents, survivors of violence, and others that are just really the most in need. 87% of communities in Michigan are infant and toddler care deserts. And so what I mean by that is if you live in a rural area, or years ago when I had my 19-year-old, when I was staying downtown Detroit, it was childcare deserts. Childcares that were for miles and miles away from our house, and the ones that were close by wasn't affordable. And it wasn't accessible for someone if they have a disability. So this is why we need a universal childcare system, excuse me, I'm so sorry, that centers the needs of these families and is really inclusive for families. So, and when you think right now, you're like, oh, there is some programs, right? But 0 to 3, we're really struggling and falling behind because there's no dedicated public funding for children 3 years and under. I just want to be clear about that. So that's another issue for working families, who most have to who are working to sustain that. I always think about Representative Donovan McKinney. He has 3 young children right now, and I believe 2 of them are under 2. And I always think about, like, I know his childcare bill is wild. And so I hold those families in my heart when you are thinking about the rising costs in childcare deserts. So we really need to start standing up for that workforce that's behind the workforce, because I too have that 2-year-old who's jumping off the back of my couch with no underwear on. I need childcare for him. Okay, so we really need this system. So I'm gonna talk to y'all about what we have right now. So when you hear the governor say we have pre-K for all, that means free for 4-year-olds. That program is newly, and I believe it was just this year. There is no income limits on it, and so it's about us getting the word out too, so folks understand and know that um, that there is a program for free 4-year-olds. I will say that it doesn't help with childcare deserts. So these are for childcare centers that already exist, right? And then the other issue is that it did destabilize the childcare system because there were unintended consequences, I believe, from that policy that closed the doors of private childcare centers because the 4-year-old programs essentially were put into the school system and the funds wasn't able to go to childcare providers that were doing private home care solutions for families. And so if I was used to having 10 4-year-olds, I wasn't able to get that funding if I was already a childcare provider. And so there was some unintended consequences for that has also that we also need to make more accessible. There's another program, it's called QRIS, which is like a quality rating system. So if you go to a childcare center and there's a sign outside, and it's like, we have 4 stars, we have these many stars. Those stars are associated with funding, and it's not always culturally acceptable. It is not always equitable to families, and it doesn't also solve the issue that we are having with it being more accessible to all families. There's also a child care scholarship rate. So Michigan Children's, which is an organization, wants to see an increase to 7.5%, and it's higher than inflation. And in the current budget, they were flat funded, and so the costs for providers are also going up. So that's what we have, and those are some of the issues we're having. There's also a program that people like, which is called TriShare. That means I pay, the employer pay, the government pay. That is useful in some parts of the state. In other parts of the state, it's not useful because it doesn't answer, again, accessibility. I always think about when my 19-year-old was young and he has disabilities. He has cerebral palsy, hydrocephalus, epilepsy. I was still a working mama, and I wanted to be able to take him to daycare and work. And it was like, oh, your child can come, but he's going to need a parapro. I was like, I don't even have no money to pay for childcare. So I don't have any money to also pay for a parapro. And so again, having accessibility. But when I've been able to talk to providers, they're like, we want to have children who have disabilities. We want to be able to service those families, but we don't have the training. And so we need to set up a system that is also able to give families the training. So I'm wrapping up because I know I've been talking for a while. But the solution is a universal child care system that no family should pay more than 7% of their income or more than $10 a day. And so that is the solution that we are striving for families who have children under the age of 4, and to just make it more accessible, quality, and stabilize the entire childcare system so that we are not paying 40% of our income for childcare any longer. So let's get to work, y'all. Thank you again for having me here. And let's help the workforce behind the workforce, and let's help families. Thank you.
Thank you. And also thanks for being on, especially after a long day. I know that it was a big day for Mothering Justice. You all had the Mamas March at the Capitol, and it was a little bit dreary and wet. So hopefully everyone had a great day though. Thank you.
Yes, it was very exciting. Thank you.
Amazing. And the $10 a day, Canada's making it work. So let's figure it out. Love that. All right, up next, we are going to hear from Ted Phillips, who is a tremendous leader in the housing space, and he is with United Community Housing Coalition. Welcome, Ted.
Thank you. And thank you, Senator Chang, for asking me on. United Community Housing Coalition is an organization in Detroit that's been around for over 50 years. I've been there nearly since 1986. And we fight every day to try to preserve affordable housing for the people that we're working to assist those 200% or less of poverty, 80% AMI, the low income population for Detroit. And I think a lot of what we're doing there applies across the board. Next slide. And we can go to the next one, Lonnie. Okay, some of the things that we've seen here, and I think they're appropriate elsewhere as well, is that Detroit home values have increased 90% in the last 10 years. There's a U of M study I think it was in 2024 that showed that. And the good news on that was that our values as Detroiters did increase. And if we're selling our properties, we get more out of them. We have more equity, et cetera, et cetera. But what this also creates is barriers for new buyers, as their costs are even greater and harder for people to buy. It also, we've heard from, it's also resulted in taxes being increased when buyers buy, because old taxes are uncapped. We're hearing from landlords that insurance costs are up. And as a result of all of that, rental rates have also gone much higher. Next one, Lonnie. Again, the price is going to exceed what residents can afford. There's limited access to many in Detroit for traditional mortgages. There's increased reliance on land contracts, which have a benefit, but also can be a real problem. Rental costs in Detroit have been escalating. On the screen here are some examples of that. Studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedrooms. Average income in Detroit is about $36,590 according to the census in 2026. And the line there shows where that is, and the bars show what would be needed to meet those rental amounts. We are frequently representing people and assisting them on SSI, $980 a month. So you can see that population in particular, there's no way they can afford this. So next slide. So what we are looking at is what is needed is more affordable housing, more subsidized housing. We can go to the next slide, Marnie. Next. And that's not likely to happen at the federal level, but back to the other slide. The main ones here, housing vouchers, they can be obtained from any housing commission in the state, or MSHDA. You can only apply at one state office of MSHDA or another, or MSHDA agent or another. But that's when they're available, and very often there's long waiting lists. But that is something that we work with to make sure that people can use their vouchers. Site-based housing, public housing, senior housing, very often senior housing is the most available. LIHTC housing in Detroit, I don't know if it's true elsewhere, but we seem to be having a lot of losses of that this year. I've heard 1,500 to 2,000. That can be very affordable for some. On the lower end, the way LIHTC housing is set up, however, rents vary considerably. On the higher end, it's not very affordable. It is less than market rate though still. Next slide. One of the things that's needed to be able to ensure that tenants can maintain their housing is support, legal support. Once there's an eviction that occurs, that can impact the tenant for lifetime. If you lose your Section 8 voucher, you lose your subsidized site-based housing, you can find that you're barred from it for life. So when I talk about subsidized housing, I'm saying where the rent is 30% of someone's income. It's a couple of phone numbers on the screen. This is going to go to the senator's office, so you can access through that. But in Detroit, there's a number to call, and outside of Detroit, Lakeshore Legal Aid is the best number to call there on the screen. Next. Let's go to the next one. In terms of home ownership issues, what we're seeing is that it's very difficult for the populations that we work with. Almost no one can get a mortgage. There are homeowner counseling programs that are available. Mostly they are there to assist people getting into mortgages. And as I said, our populations don't fit that. Next. Programs that we have as an example of what can work in a land contract. We have a program called Make It Home, which is with the city of Detroit, where we're able to obtain tax foreclosed properties and have put 1,700 persons into ownership status in the last several years with properties that they purchased for $6,000 to $8,000. Other communities could do that as well if they choose to do it, but I believe Detroit's the only one in Michigan that is doing that. In terms of land contracts, they're not always bad, but we're going to see in a second ones that are and what we need to be careful about. But our land contracts are 0% interest. We sell for the cost of what we buy properties for. Our payments are 30% of income. We only work with owner occupants that want to own their homes. We get involved a lot of times when land contracts are failing at the point of being an eviction happening in court. And we intervene to buy out the land contracts anywhere from $5,000 to $30,000 very often with payoffs in 1 to 5 years. Next slide. Some of the problems with land contracts and where some legislation might be helpful to regulate these better. The interest rates can be up to 11%. A lot of times there are balloon payments in these land contracts that are sort of hidden. It won't always be obvious when there's a payment per month of $500 at 11% interest. It will not always be obvious to someone who's never bought a house before that they're not going to pay off a $50,000 debt in 5 years. And there's going to be a big balloon at the end, and they're going to lose the property at that point. There's also very often misleading terms that don't match what the buyer has told the seller. The seller has told the buyer, excuse me. Things such as, of course I'm going to put in a furnace. Of course I'm going to do this, that, or something else. And then the land contract will say something entirely differently. These are often involve large down payments, large relative to the incomes of the population. Very often tax return time, disability checks that pending. I had one client many years ago. He literally gave up his arm for his house and then lost the house. We unfortunately got it way too late. Also, these contracts are very often not recordable. There's a horrible provision in the state law that does not allow a land contract to be recorded. If there's taxes owed, that should change. There's also other reasons sometimes. Many land contracts fail due to large interest, buyers being unaware of the full terms. And when that happens, they lose everything that they put into the property. If they have paid more than half the balance, they will get 90 days to redeem if they go to court. If they paid more than half the balance, they'll get 180 days to redeem. It's very helpful to have legal representation in these. The other kind of thing that occurs a good deal is rent to own, which is a variation of a land contract. The difference is that they're almost always set up to fail. The terms in them are so onerous that it's almost impossible to meet. And when the buyer on a rent to own deal defaults on that, they do not get an opportunity to redeem. They get brought into court as a tenant. They get 10 days to move once the judgment enters against them. So in all of these things, one of the things that is really needed is right to counsel statewide and some funding for right to counsel to continue in the city of Detroit. We've made a tremendous difference in Detroit, going from 30,000 cases a year down to 20, which is way, way, way too much. But there's no place else in the country, we're told, where there's been that kind of decline. That can happen elsewhere across the state as well. And there's a need for tenants to be able to have support and land contract buyers to be able to have support, to be able to be represented in court. There's other kinds of support that's needed as well. If you know somebody getting into a land contract, it's really important that they get some assistance before signing it. I always tell folks that we can tell you what you're about to get into and lobby and negotiate to get it better if we talk to you beforehand. But even if it's done after the fact, it's still important to get counseling. If you know anybody that has a land contract, they should get that kind of help as well, to know what kinds of problems they may run into. As I said before, often land contracts are not recordable. That can lead to all sorts of problems, like the land contract seller selling to another person, and the first buyer ending up losing because they had no recorded interest. Memorandums of land contract, claims of interest can be filed. Again, there's a need for attorneys to be able to do some of those kinds of work. Next slide. And that's our ending. So would urge support for right to counsel, support for programs like that, to be able to get the kind of assistance that the low-income populations need to keep what they've got, because we're not going to be getting more federal money in all likelihood for subsidized housing in this administration, which is crucially what's needed. I'm not sure that the state can do much on that, though. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ted. You can always count on learning at least 3 to 5 new things, any conversation you have with Ted or any presentation that he gives. So my team and I we're furiously writing notes, and we've got a couple bill ideas out of that. And we've been a huge fan and supporter of Right to Counsel, and eager to try to get some state support again. So thank you again, Ted. Next, we are going to, and again, thank you also everyone for being on and for putting in questions in the Q&A on Zoom and also in the Facebook comments. We're going to get to those in a couple of minutes. But before we do that, and Allison is going to moderate the Q&A, Allison from my team. But before we do that, I wanted to show a couple quick videos. They're very short, and they are related to car insurance. So I know a lot of you will probably be eager to learn more. So Mike, if you could get us rolling. Just so you know, I can't hear the video, and probably that means that others can't hear it. So let's see if we can get that fixed.
You might have to do like share screen audio. So when you share the screen, then you do audio instead of just share screen. That may be helpful.
Thank you. Why don't we do a question while Mike is adjusting the technology? Allison?
Yep.
Thank you.
So, our first question
Why don't
comes.
we do a question while technology? Allison?
Okay, so our first question comes from Bridget, who asks, "Who is helping with water bills?"
Cindy, do you want to respond to that?
Sure. Let me start by saying there is not enough help available. And I also want to say that in credit credit to Michigan, believe it or not, during the summer of 2020, with federal COVID relief dollars, Michigan became the first state in the country and beat the federal government at providing any help for water bills. So, I've always kind of felt like we are on the leading edge of dealing with a massive problem, and we have not been able to do it adequately. And over the past 6 years, there's been the federal government had a brief federal program for water assistance, and there's been a total of $136.2 million available to Michigan residents. And right now we are, sort of in a place where there is a way to apply for assistance dollars. First of all, you need to have filed with State Emergency Relief, the SER program, in order to be eligible for any of the funds that are out there. And if you already have an SER application and you're in the system, then we recommend contacting 211, because 211 knows for each area who the agency is that can help you, whether it is a local community action agency, or in some cases the Salvation Army. In other cases, there's support from the United Way of Southeast Michigan. And so it's easiest, without knowing where everybody is located, if you don't have a state emergency application, I can put a link to that in the chat. And then if you do have that, I would just call 211, tell them where you are, and they can get you connected. The question too is where these different agencies are in terms of funding being available. And if so, how much money is available? And I'm saying all of this to point out that we do have some resources available for emergency use, but what we really need is to get this legislation passed so that we will have a way that people don't have to ask for assistance, that they can pay a predetermined amount every month and stay on track with keeping their water bills updated and keeping the water on. So that's, and Bridget, if you have additional questions about that, please put them in the chat and we can come back to it. But Senator, did you have anything to add to that?
And I think it was a great response. And definitely 211 is a great resource for kind of everything that we've talked about actually on this town hall. If you're in Detroit, you probably know about some of the programs that DWSD has, like Lifeline H2O or the Easy Pay. Hopefully I'm getting the name right. If you're in other parts of my district, because I do have also parts of Oakland and Macomb and also Hamtramck and Highland Park, there are other programs that may be available. So you can definitely feel free to reach out to us. And if you know someone or if you yourself are having trouble paying a water bill, we can definitely help get you to the right place. Oakland County, for example, has its own program to help. And then within the Great Lakes Water Authority service area, the RAP program exists, but again, it's sort of dependent on where you are, how much money is still left. So thank you very much for the question. Mike, did we have any luck with the audio?
Let's try it.
Thank you.
When you ask people what is used to set the price of your auto insurance, most people will say, well, what's my driving record? Do I have crashes or not? Do I have any tickets or not? Maybe how many miles I drive every year? Am I a new driver? Have I been driving for a long time? People get that. People understand why your rates will vary if you have a perfect record compared with somebody with a drunk driving conviction. In researching the use of credit scores around the country, Michigan comes out as the worst in terms of allowing the insurance companies to penalize good drivers, people with safe records, just because they have fair or poor credit. So the price that people pay in Michigan is multiplied dramatically if they happen to have poor credit. And what that really is doing is letting the insurance companies prey on the most financially vulnerable, people who have had healthcare issues, gone through divorce, lost a spouse, because these are the things that drive people's credit scores down, right? And so in Michigan, the companies just prey on folks who have had their credit score tumble, even if they've never caused a crash or gotten ticketed. And of course, that's unfair. Now, something that makes my blood boil is that the state's regulator of the insurance market, the Department of Insurance and Financial Services, they're the ones that are supposed to be looking out for you and keeping the insurance companies honest. They go out and say in press releases and in testimony to the legislature that the insurance companies don't use credit scores in the Michigan market. Now, we've tested it, and I've read the files that the insurance companies submit about their rating plans. They absolutely use credit history when determining how much customers pay. They don't call it credit scores. They call it something called credit-based insurance scores, which are based on your credit score. It's the same thing by another name. The regulators and DIFs know this, and I have no idea why they continue to mislead Michigan drivers and the legislature about this. See, the legislature passed a law back in 2019 that said insurance companies couldn't use credit scores like FICO scores. But what the insurance companies who are right there helping to write the legislation knew, they didn't use quote unquote credit scores like FICO scores. They used something called credit-based insurance scores to incorporate people's credit history. It's the same thing by a different name. And the legislature just let the insurance industry walk all over them and come up with this complete fake legislation that was supposed to promise reform and gave none of it. It really angers me that the regulators in the state have their head in the sands and refuse to talk about this. The fact is, they even lie about it by telling people that your credit isn't used. In fact, the insurance companies in Michigan use your credit more aggressively than they do in any other state in the country. That's what makes me so angry. That's not fair, that's not honest, and it's a huge problem for those folks who are paying not only hundreds, but thousands of dollars or more for their insurance than they should.
Thank you. And we've got one more short video, and then we'll go back to questions.
In fact, in 2019, the legislature wrote a law that prohibited redlining in the auto insurance market. They went on to also say that insurance companies could no longer use zip codes to price auto insurance. That was supposed to be the reform that we needed to end this legacy of discrimination. But you see, the insurance industry was right there helping the legislature write the bill. And they knew that they could write all those words in, make people in politics feel good about themselves, and still have no impact on the insurance industry's not just willingness, but desire to slice and dice and price Michigan just the way they always have. So when they said you can't use zip codes, they didn't say that the insurance companies couldn't find other ways to split up communities. And so now a number of the insurance companies use what are called census tract block groups. These are actually smaller communities than zip codes. These are neighborhoods for which we have all sorts of data about the income and race of the residents. And so now you have, instead of one zip code price, you'll see a zip code broken down into 8 different sets of pricing tools for the insurance companies to use. But what do we see? We see those old practices of redlining showing up, only it's at a more refined level. If you can believe it, after the 2019 reform that was supposed to end redlining, the insurance companies are even more precise with their discrimination.
Thank you. Really informative videos. I want to just note that in previous terms, I've actually worked on legislation that addresses a number of both credit information as well as the geographic factors. And it's something that myself and Senator Mary Cavanaugh and others are very passionate about and eager to get those bills reintroduced because I think it's very important that we have fairness in our car insurance rating system. And so we should not be using non-driving factors to determine people's rates, how much they're paying. So I'm going to turn it back over to Allison to go back to the questions. And again, if you are just now tuning in on Facebook Live, feel free to put your comments or questions in the comment section.
All right, so we'll take a question from Facebook Live. Are our energy bills going to go up to fund data centers?
Great question. Aaron, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. So I will say a lot of utility companies might claim that, yeah, like their systems are either connected to the grid or not connected to the grid, and they won't like increase the costs of like a house down the street's bill. But as these like data centers like increase in capacity or there's more of them, we are like, it's inevitable that we'll see higher rate increases each year from utility companies that would ultimately, whether directly or indirectly, be a result of data centers. This is probably a few years out, but it's also right around the corner too in many communities. So we'll really wait and see, but with rate increases being something that occurs almost every single year, we could foresee those getting higher for sure. Those requests, that is.
All right, thank you. Our next question will be from Zoom. So Sarah writes, first of all, thank you for holding this town hall. Just to skip ahead. The ratepayer Bill of Rights and other highlights from LVC sound great, but what is the likelihood of this passing through the legislation and getting signed?
Yeah, so that is a great question. And so something I'll note is in the House, there are many bills within the Ratepayer Bill of Rights and legislation that's proposed right now that are bipartisan. And it's really about beating the drum, so to speak, to our lawmakers to ensure that like there is that bipartisan support to get this passed because as we know, like there is divided government right now, and so to get anything passed, it requires bipartisan support. So it's about sending that message to your lawmakers that, hey, like I am your constituent and I want this ratepayer bill of rights, this bill package passed. And that is what is going to ultimately get it across the finish line. And I'll also say a part of this is kind of something I noted in the slides is having a bill, having legislation around getting money out of politics, because without like corporate influence, that could also lead to this legislation being more likely to pass, even if it is a divided government and ultimately being signed. So kind of two aspects there, both like advocacy to your lawmaker and then also getting that money out of the politics. Thank you.
I'll just echo all of what Aaron just said. I think it's really important for folks to make their voices heard. Obviously, I'm here and support what was presented, but if you have a state rep or if you are tuning in from another Senate district, please feel free to reach out to your senator and ask what they think about these proposals, because I think it's super important that we hear from you. So thank you for the question.
All right, our next question is from Nikita. It says, what is the legislative body doing to bring down auto insurance?
Yeah, so you heard a little bit about some of the issues that need to be addressed with related to the credit scores and related to the redlining issue. And so, as I mentioned earlier, I've previously introduced legislation, I think 3 or maybe even 4 times on this topic to do basically something that California does. There is a law that I think is still there in California that basically says that car insurance companies need to prioritize 3 factors first: your driving record, how long you've been driving, and I think the number of miles on your car. I think I'm remembering those right. And then everything else has to be prioritized less in terms of how they're factoring into your final bill that you're paying. And we explicitly say you cannot use geographic information, you cannot use any kind of credit information. And I think we also add in a few other things like your gender, your education status, and a few other things like that, which surprisingly are still things that unfortunately can be considered. So so that is one thing that myself and Senator Kavanaugh have been working diligently on. And then I also know that one of my colleagues, Senator Irwin, has also introduced legislation that actually is a flat out requiring all car insurance companies to reduce their rates by a certain amount. And I don't remember off the top of my head what that amount is. But I know that this is something that the legislature, at least in the Michigan Senate, where we are eager to tackle this issue in the coming months. So stay tuned.
Okay, our next question is, do you work with domestic violence organizations? A lot of the parents that we deal with have this barrier while they're attempting to flee. I'm assuming that's childcare.
That's a great question. So assuming that that comment was made during the childcare discussion, Aisha, do you want to take that, the connection between childcare and for those who are domestic violence survivors?
Yeah. Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Sure.
Apologies for that.
It is, do you work with domestic violence organizations? A lot of parents that we deal with have this barrier while they're attempting to flee.
Um, yeah, no, thank you for repeating that question and thank you for asking that question. I can follow up with you about the barriers and how there is resources. I know there's some places in particular that do take families who are experiencing domestic violence. I know there's um, anonymity that childcare centers have to follow if you are in those spaces, but I don't want to give the wrong information about people who are in situations with domestic violence. But I can follow up. I can share the information with the senator. But I do know that there is an issue when you are fleeing and you're trying to stay safe, and then the kid is kind of, they can do things to try to put the kid in the middle of that to get to them. And yeah, there's a number of issues that I am aware of. So yeah, I would love to follow back up with you and answer that question. And I don't want to say some of the places that I know that are for safe families for the sake of those places may be wanting to stay anonymous on a live stream, but I can share that with the senator and we can try to follow up with you if you do know families, or so you can have that resource for those families.
All right, thank you so much. Our next question is, uh, can you speak on, or can you speak on besides the SER, is there any other rental assistance for someone that has fallen behind?
I'm not aware on the state level that there is. I know in Detroit there is a program that the city has through the Housing Services Division of the Housing Revitalization Department, where they can pay up to $4,500. That is usually available to persons in subsidized housing, with the idea being that the loss of that will likely render them homeless. I'm not aware of, and I know they also can provide some assistance for relocation. We provide some assistance in Detroit for relocation as well, very limited though. But other than SER and that, I'm not aware of any kind of broad-based support that's available. No. And it would be good if there was. I mean, that is a real shortfall. It's in addition to legal representation, there's a need for rental assistance in a big way. There's a need for eviction diversion programs in a big way, and a lot more than just legal counsel is needed out there.
And I will note before we go back to Allison that during COVID, our government prioritized this, right? At the federal level and at the state level, we created funds to be able to help people. In Michigan, we had the CERA program, CERA, which obviously is no longer. And so if we can prioritize people and making sure that they have a home during a pandemic, that is something that we should absolutely prioritize now as well, especially when people are just really struggling with so many different areas of their life where costs are going up. And so to me, I think back to COVID and the fact that our communities came together and said, we need to take care of one another. And our government decided, let's help make this happen. And I hope that we can shift back to that kind of mindset of how do we take care of one another.
We were one
So-
of those agencies that did that, Senator Chang. And I think Detroit had upwards of $170 million. And it wasn't just Detroit, others did too. So it was a huge difference then and now.
Okay, our next question is, I am a Detroit okay, sorry, did I just read this one? I am a Detroit resident and on Lifeline Affordability H2O plan. I pay $34 a month on my water bill. Okay, I'm sorry, I thought that was a question. Our next question is, what nonprofits can help with housing and food needs?
So for housing, Ted obviously is a great, great resource. Ted, do you want to talk more about what kinds of specific resources you all can help with?
Sure. I mean, unfortunately, we're limited to Detroit just based on funding, but we do eviction defense in 36th District Court. We do, that's for tenants and for land contract holders. And we do some intervention with mortgage foreclosure issues, but we don't see a lot of those. We do housing relocation work for people about to be evicted and in need of it. We have a tax foreclosure prevention project that's been going since 2003 to deal with the massive numbers of tax foreclosures there are every year. I think last year there was, despite a decline, upwards of 35,000 foreclosures in Wayne County. I'm not saying that's how many were foreclosed, that's how many were noticed of being in foreclosure, and a lot of work done to bring that down to, I'm not even going to say what gets said, like only a few thousand, because that's a ridiculous number of homes to be lost each year. We also have a repair program that we work with homes that we've purchased. We've used the tax foreclosure as a way of getting homes that are foreclosed into the hands of the tenant occupants and low-income owner occupants that did not get their exemption like they should. We work to get HOPE exemptions for people. That's a program in Detroit to lower taxes under the statewide poverty tax exemption, which other local communities could do as well. But I've not seen a lot that are doing much with that. But certainly those are some of the things we do, and then we intervene a lot to try to connect up people to other programs for rental assistance, like the city's program, for example. There aren't a lot of them out there, and then do as much as we can to preserve people being in affordable housing already to be able to remain there.
Thank you. And we know that there are also organizations that help with various resources in Oakland and Macomb. So if you live in one of those areas and you ask that question, then definitely reach out to us so we can help connect you. On food, thank you for raising the question about food, because obviously that is a big, big issue. And I think has been a big conversation, especially with SNAP benefits and other things in recent months. So I will note that there are a lot of organizations that help with food. And so I think the easiest way is if you can let us email my office and let us know where you live, and we can help direct you to a resource that is closest to you. I don't know, I'm losing track of what months things happened in. But my team actually put together a list of the various food banks and food pantries in and nearby Senate District 3. And so we did post those. So maybe we will try to find that again and then repost it. So that it is available for everyone to look at. So I think that we have exhausted all of the questions on Facebook Live, I believe, and on Zoom. I want to end with a couple quick questions here. Hopefully they're quick. One is a question for whoever wants to respond. What are some steps that people can take to make their voices heard on these issues? And actually, let's make that the closing question. So if everyone of the speakers wants to share a response, what are some things that people can do to make their voices heard on these issues?
Well, I'm off mute. I can go first. um, you can get active at Mother and Justice Action Fund. You can become a member. You can go to motherandjusticeactionfund.org. You can go to motherandjustice.org. Today we had a lobby day, like Senator Chang mentioned earlier today. That is one of the biggest ways that your voice can be heard, because you're talking directly to lawmakers and you're letting them know the things that that are impacting you. I think the other way is voting. We had a horrible decision made today in the Supreme Court, and all of the things that we are seeing happen in front of us right now is a reflection of folks not voting. We're still powerful. We still have a voice. We can still make change. We can still move the needle. We can still be radical, right? But we have to get out and vote. All of us here do work to make sure we getting out to vote. And so my call to action, my challenge is, if you on this call, I know you voting, but bring somebody with you. And we hear people say that all the time, but you have to bring a friend or a family member or a neighbor. Fill up your car. You got 4 seats in your car. It should be 4 people in your car coming with you to vote. And so I will just implore you to join any of the folks who are doing this work on this call and to vote strongly, to vote.
Cindy?
I can go? Sure. So I would just say, first of all, take care of yourselves. If you're here because you're facing the challenges that have been discussed here, number one, take care of yourself. I cannot stress that enough. Secondly, I would say get involved with another organization that is working on the issues that you care about, or that is, some groups are doing multiple issues. And I know that, like Aisha was saying, that the mothering justice agenda is broader than just, the issues that affect moms is very broad. And in terms of water specifically, which is what I worked on for many decades, if you're interested in helping ensure that water bills are affordable and that people can keep their water on, the People's Water Board Coalition has been a driving force behind this effort for decades, and really working with Senator Chang on the legislative effort. And so I can put their link in the chat as well, but the People's Water Board Coalition is really a critical space to be able to get involved, get engaged. I can also share the names of the other groups that are part of this effort, but we really have to come together and make sure that water is part of the conversation when it comes to affordability, and anything you can do on that front. And Senator Chang already said, don't contact her. She's leading this work. But if you aren't in Senator Chang's district, there are others who care about this, but they care about a lot of things. And this has to remain top of mind, especially since it's been invisible for so long. So thank you.
I would agree with the notion of take care of yourself, but I would also say that, you know, help take care of your neighbor. I can't tell you the number of times that I've seen in my career that a really ugly crisis case, we had recently one with a 86-year-old that we were able to intervene with and save her house after the mortgage foreclosure and at point of eviction, which is about as late as you can possibly be. But a lot of these come to us by a neighbor, by a friend, but sometimes by the senator's office, sometimes by a councilman's office, but very often by a neighbor or a friend wanting to know. So if you know somebody in need, you're in Detroit or in Wayne County particularly, try to get them to sources. 211 can help out some, but if you're in Detroit and it's housing, starting with us isn't a bad idea. Even if we're not the right place to go, we usually will know where to steer somebody to, or try to steer somebody to. So I would add that. And then in terms of specific issues, I do think the right to counsel is something that has made a huge difference in Detroit. Detroit can do a lot more. They've relied totally on ARPA federal money from Biden. That's going away this year. We're in jeopardy of falling back into where we were before. Some advocacy at the council level, at the mayor's level, needs to be done. The city takes a position that they cannot use certain general fund monies for this. They can. University of Michigan, ACLU has done some work on this to show that they can, and we need to be standing for that. And at the state level, again, if there's some support the state can give and support it in other communities as well, that would be great. Another thing at the state level would be expanding the funds for homeowner assistance, principal reduction, first-time homeowner, to land contract cases with some land contract reform, so that it would not go to sleazy investors, but to programs that provide an opportunity for truly low-income people to actually become homeowners. And I think that would giving that additional assistance to them as well. In addition to homebuyer assistance right now goes to persons getting a mortgage and a mortgage only, in my experience. And that should not be. Thank you.
Great. So kind of what I said at the beginning about Michigan LCV is, we work to elect, hold accountable, and get policies passed that protect Michigan's air, land, and water. And really, that all begins with people like you that are on this call. And that work, yeah, it's not done in a vacuum. So it's about getting out there with yourself, your neighbors, your families. There's so many great organizations across the state and in Southeast Michigan doing work across all different topics. Michigan LCV is just one of them. And we have a website with great events. We have great organizers in the Detroit area and Senator Chang's district that really work to get that message out there, that we need stronger environmental protections, that we need protections for consumers. And like I said, that this work begins with you, and it's about getting out there and being involved. And voting is that other step, as well as Aisha had mentioned.
So, takeaways. We've got an opportunity to make some change on every single one of these issues, and there's a lot of great groups for folks to plug into who are doing this work every day. So get involved. Also spread the word. If you learned something new today, which I hope you did, because I know that I did, tell a neighbor, tell a friend, tell a family member, and say, have you thought about this issue, and see if they want to help join you in taking action. So thank you so much to every single one of our panelists today for sharing your expertise and lots of great information. Thank you to my team, and thank you to Mike for making the videos happen and setting all of this Zoom technology up for us. And most importantly, thank you all for tuning in, and we hope everyone has a good night. Thank you.